was Nirvana. All apologies, don't you love those guys? I'm hoping I've got Wayne on the line. Can you hear me, Wayne?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Really good. Now, just before we go into our chat, I just wanted to do a quick introduction just to let people know who you are and what you do. So your name is Wayne Spurrier, and you've worked with Haunted Happenigs, the UK's biggest public ghost hunting company, for over 7 years, travelling the UK to haunted castles, pubs and prisons in search of paranormal activity. And your passion for all things spooky comes from witnessing what you believe was a ghost at a very young age, but since then you've experienced a number of spooky goings-on which have further incited your interest and beliefs in ghosts and spirits, and you approach every event with an open mind, always looking to eliminate the obvious in search of true paranormal activity, and you love sharing your passion with the Haunted Happenigs guests. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you, yeah.
That's good to hear. Now, can you just tell me a little bit about your background and how you managed to get into this field of work?
Well, my background is completely unrelated. I've worked in marketing for a number of years. But as you just mentioned, something happened to me when I was quite young that sort of sparked a bit of an interest. And sort of in about the last 10 years, ghost hunting became sort of popular for the public, public through a lot of TV programs. And I went along to one of those organised events, the types that Haunted Happenings run. And I had a couple of experiences that I couldn't explain. I went along with an open mind, thinking, well, there must be something to this because people have talked about ghosts and spirits for thousands of years. A couple of things happened, and I just got really drawn into it. And I was fortunate then to be asked to go along and start to help out sort of with running the events and to help other people have those experiences, and I've been doing it ever since.
So tell me, what are some of the experiences that you have? Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback there. So tell me, what are some of the ghostly experiences that you have had?
Well, for me personally, I mean, although I've been doing it for 7 years, I could probably count on one hand the number of genuine, absolute experiences that I just couldn't explain. But I have, I don't consider myself to be psychic or sensitive in any way. But I just go to these old buildings and locations and just get involved. And in that time, I've physically seen a figure, along with one of our guests, a place called Woodchester Mansion down in Gloucestershire, walk across a doorway that they couldn't possibly have been there. It couldn't have been one of our people, and we just ran straight to the spot and there was nobody there.
Did it look like a real person? Did it look like a physical person?
Yeah, it was silhouetted against an open doorway, so the moonlight was coming in, and you could see the head, shoulders, arms and legs walking at a fair pace, but basically straight in front of them was a stone wall. And there's just no way we had a clear line of sight. There's no way they either had to turn and walk towards us or turn and walk away from us, and they just continued straight forward. It was incredible.
Isn't it just? I mean, I've seen a couple of things myself, and I think it's not. I know a lot of people out there would identify with this. So many people have seen these things, and you kind of think to yourself, well, there is something going on. Now, I heard, and I want to get your take on this, but I heard that ghosts and these sorts of things, these entities or whatever, are sort of like a radio signal, like a vibrational signal that's being broadcast from another reality, and occasionally it interferes with our reality, kind of like static, and that's when we see them.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of different theories, and the honest answer is, and I think this is why it appeals to so many people, is that nobody truly knows. So we all look for our own experience, and that's what these public events are about. They're about you going somewhere and trying to have your own experience. For me, what makes sense is that time doesn't go from A to B. It goes in lots and lots of different layers, and you can sort of slip through those layers like a groove in a record, suddenly jumping, and two times can cross, and you suddenly witness something from a previous time. Likewise, you could have somebody 200 years in front of you walking down the street and look at you and think they've seen a ghost. If you think about it that way.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So tell me about when you were a kid growing up, what was the experience that you had that made you go down this path?
Well, all it was something very simple and straightforward, but I was, for some reason, late at night, I got out of bed, I was looking out of my bedroom window, looking across sort of the open space in front of the house, and I could see somebody stood out there, and they appeared to be leaning up against the wall and looking up at my window. And my dad came into the room, and I asked him if he knew asked him to look out of the window and if he knew who it was, because it kind of frightened me. Somebody was stood there looking at me.
Yeah.
And he said there's nobody down there, and he couldn't see anybody, and yet I could see this figure, this shape, that was definitely of human form, stood against the wall, and he couldn't see it. And I'll never know to this day whether there was somebody there and for some reason he just couldn't see them or what, but it just planted a seed in my head that, I wonder if that was something.
Yeah, it's interesting when that question comes up.
Absolutely.
So you were both looking at the same spot at the same time, and he couldn't see it and you could?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Looking out of my bedroom window.
But you don't consider yourself to be psychic in any way or sensitive?
No, in the sense that I can walk into these buildings, and some of our guests and some of our sort of psychic mediums that we sometimes work with, we'll be able to sense and feel energies within the room and suddenly feel that something feels different. Yeah. And I don't pick up on any of that, but a lot of my experiences, the personal ones, have been visual. So I guess we all experience things in different ways.
So tell me a little bit more. Tell me a spooky story. What's the spookiest thing that you've had happen?
The spookiest thing for me personally was at a place in the West Midlands at the Station Hotel, where we were stood in a large cellar room. I'd got 5 guests sat on with their hands on a table. We were asking for knocks to be repeated, and I took a coin out of my pocket. And it was pitch black. I didn't know whether it was a 1 pence or a 5 pence, but from the size, it was one of those. And I threw it overhead to the other end of the room, and we heard it hit. But then a second later, I heard a noise by the side of my foot, and I looked down, and there was a 1 pence piece right next to my foot. Now, we scoured the room. We didn't hear it roll back. We scoured the room, and it's a brick floor, and I've tried to roll a coin back, and I couldn't. And the only coin we could find in the room was right next to my foot, but I'd thrown it a good 20, maybe even 30 feet away. And I just couldn't explain how a coin could have got back to me. And we couldn't find it, and it really sent a chill up my spine.
Oh, yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? So you're an event host.
That's right.
For Haunted Happenigs.
That's right.
Now, I know you do a bit of work, or do you primarily focus on Ordsall Hall, is that correct?
Yeah, Ordsall Hall is one of our most popular locations in Salford.
Right.
And but I mean, we travel as far north as Edinburgh, as far south as Cornwall and Kent. But sort of in the Manchester area, there are lots of different locations, and Ordsall Hall is certainly one of the most popular. We've been visiting there for probably seven years or so, I think. And because of there have been lots of experiences, and we've actually captured something on a camera there as well during one of our Halloween events. So it becomes more and more popular as people get to know about it.
Wow. So is Ordsall Hall inhabited? Is it like a working hall?
It's open to the public now. So it's not currently inhabited. It's open to the public as a sort of as a museum, if you like, and school trips and everything visit there. So, but it was restored a few years ago, sort of back to its kind of former glory, if you like. And
Ordsall Hall, is it correct? It was built in the 12th century?
Well, it actually dates back. The buildings on the site dates back about 750 years.
Wow.
The oldest part of the current building that's there dates to about the 15th century. But over the years, I mean, it was a family home to one family for about 300 years. It's been a working men's club. It was a school for clergy. And there was even a radio station hosted from there during the Second World War.
Oh, wow.
So it's been used for lots and lots of different things. And obviously all that history, if you imagine a building sort of absorbs things that happened during its past, then, that's kind of why there's so many different layers of history within that one building.
So I guess that you guys would be interested in that hall because of the level of paranormal activity. What's some of the stories that are associated with that hall in terms of, death and destruction?
Well, there is a white lady that the figure of a white lady has been seen on numerous occasions in the Great Hall. Now, I mentioned before that we captured a photograph. They have ghost cams set up within the hall that are constantly recording. And during one of our ghost hunting Halloween events there, a figure can be seen sort of stood within the room where a couple of our guests are stood. And you can see like a white shape of a figure in there. And that's thought to be a lady called Margaret, who was one of the inhabitants of the hall, who died supposedly of a broken heart following the death of her brother out at sea. But we've had lots of other experiences there with sort of where we make knocks and taps, and we've had them repeated time after time. There's an attic space up there which is particularly intense, the feelings that people have up there. And we've had grown men leave the room and refuse to go back in there because they've felt something or been touched and just been too frightened to go back.
Is there a reason? What is the reason with the attic? You know, what's going on with these attics and cellars?
Yeah, a good question. Because when I'm dead, I'm going to haunt a nice warm chair in a cosy pub.
Or a pub, yeah. I was going to say.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose, you know, obviously your mind, you know, it's pitch black up in the attic, so it's got a naturally spooky feeling to it. But what's really interesting is when we take people into these places, you know, we're very careful to manage sort of the expectations and the nerves and the excitement and to try and investigate properly. But then, for example, if you're stood with, we may have a group of people stood with their hands all linked together so that everybody is accounted for, and then I might ask if there's somebody there, could they perhaps try and touch one of our guests, you know, on the face or the hair or something, because if they've got the hands of people either side of them, they know that it can't be them. And a number of times that has happened, and people have felt as though they've been touched or grabbed by something that just isn't there. Obviously, just that sensation just becomes, you know, as you can imagine, the sudden fear of that then would send you running.
My Lord. Now, look, you've also visited prisons.
Absolutely, yeah. We go to, I mean, with Haunted Happenings, we visit any type of building that has been, you know, that has reports of ghosts and spirits, from castles, but to prisons, to old pubs, to lots of different places. And last weekend, for example, I was at Shrewsbury Prison, which was only closed a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. And there were just, you know, there are hundreds of cells. You've got the old kitchens. You've got the execution room where numerous people were hanged.
Oh my God.
So the atmosphere from those kinds of places, and obviously if you think, it's not necessarily just whether, you know, just the people that died within these places, but the intense emotions that people felt, you know, the fear, the anxiety of being within these buildings. If a building, as they believe, can absorb those kind of energies and emotions, then you can kind of get what they refer to as paranormal activity as a replay from those times. So it's a perfect setting.
Well, I couldn't imagine anything worse myself. Why do people seek this out? Why do people want to be frightened? And also, is it possible, do you think? See, my biggest concern is, if I went into a place like that, I would be worried if it was energetically possible for some sort of spirit or entity to attach to me.
Okay.
And I couldn't get rid of them.
Well, answer to your first question, the reason people go on these, looking for these experiences, I think fundamentally is there's something deep-seated within all of us in that we would love to know, is there something waiting for us? Is there something after we stop breathing, you know, on this earth? And we get people from all walks of life, you know, from somebody who maybe sort of, you know, drives a van for a living to somebody who operates an open heart surgery. We're all human beings, and we've all got that desire to know. And I believe that's what brings people to them. In terms of whether or not spirits can attach themselves to you, in over 10 years of Haunted Happenings running these events, there have never been any instances where any of our guests, any of our team have come back and felt that anything's happened. And fundamentally, when you go into these haunted buildings, what you're doing is you're connecting with energies that are linked to that building, and they are, in essence, they are part of that fabric of that building. So from that sense, you know, they're not going to attach themselves to you because they're there for whatever reason they are there.
They're connected to a different
and they
energy.
don't want to follow you home and sit and watch Coronation Street on your three-seater.
Follow me home like a big old dog.
No, absolutely.
Now tell me, so you've also been to castles as well? Yeah,
we visit a number of castles. Warwick Castle in the Midlands is particularly popular, dating back to the 11th century. William the Conqueror. A huge visitor attraction, but a phenomenal place to visit for one of these ghost hunting events. And this weekend we're doing our first ever ghost hunting experience down at Dover Castle. which again, dates back way back, and we really don't know a huge amount about it yet, other than that there have been lots of experiences reported by staff and by daytime visitors. So we're kind of going in there this weekend, sort of, with a blank canvas. Let's go and investigate. We've got a number of guests coming with us, and we're just going to go in there, carry out some experiments, and then see what happens. And hopefully it will be a really good weekend.
That's spooky. Do you think sometimes that people go in there, do you think it's possibly got something to do with the heightened emotional and mental state of people who are going into these buildings as well, that they also might be somehow doing this themselves?
There is a question mark around how much somebody experiences, and in all reality, that there may be things, there may be answers to the questions or to things that happen that we just don't have the ability to find out there and then within that environment. But one of the things that we do at the start of all of the events is we're very careful to, as I say, to manage those fears and the expectation as to what may or may not happen.
Yeah.
One of the things that we always say is that it's your experience, and you should sort of make of it whatever you will. You interpret it in your own way. But what you find is when even people that turn up very, very frightened and on edge suddenly become, as soon as you start, because it's often very subtle, as soon as you start, they get immersed in that and they kind of forget to be frightened. So the fear goes away very, very quickly, and the intrigue just sort of goes through the roof. And so whether or not people, sort of experiencing because they are sort of in a heightened state of awareness, I guess we'll never know. But we do everything we can possibly do to control the experiment, so that what we get is actually something that we just cannot explain, with lots of gadgets and lots of various different bits of ghost hunting equipment, and also the traditional experiments like sort of seances and Ouija boards, etc., etc.
Have you ever had an experience or some sort of contact? Have you ever had anyone or had an experience where it's gotten out of hand, where people have literally just jumped up and run out the door and gone, that's it, I can't handle this?
We did have one experience at Alton Towers where a gentleman that had come along, very sceptical, didn't really want to be there. He'd gone with his wife. He thought it was a load of nonsense. And then he did have a personal experience, which he didn't want to go into great detail about, but he did have something happen to him that he personally just couldn't explain, and the intensity of the emotion that he felt and everything that went with it, he actually chose to leave the event. So we chatted to him before he went, and he was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But he said, I just don't want to go back in the building. I don't want to experience that feeling and what it was that I felt. So obviously, we just made sure he was okay, and we called him again from the office a couple of days later just to make sure he hadn't, not that we were concerned he'd taken anything away from him in terms of spirit, but just that from his own mind that he was comfortable and happy, that what had happened, hadn't upset him too much in any way, and, which he was fine. He was absolutely fine, but he did say, I'm not going back in the building. We're going to leave.
It's crazy, isn't it? I remember when I was a kid and I saw the same thing 4 times in a row on 4 separate occasions, and I tried to tell my family, but they weren't in that headspace, and neither was I didn't expect to see it, but we lived in a big old house as well, and it was almost like a child.
Right.
The
thing is, it doesn't have to be the property that's there either. If you imagine, the piece of land, you could live in a very modern house. It could be built on top of a battlefield where 500 people lost their lives.
Yeah.
So if that energy is there, it could be from any point in time, which is why so many of these buildings that we go to are really intriguing, because, as I say, you've often got buildings that sit on the site where another building used to be, and they often date back, 500 to 1,000 years.
Wow.
Just incredible amounts of history.
I guess that is in terms of this country, the UK, I guess the history here is so long, and also these old buildings have had so many strange things happen in them, like in the Dark Ages where they used to torture people and do all sorts of things. So I suppose this whole region is really embedded quite deeply across the board with energies.
Very much so. I mean, if you think, the majority of the castles in England, date back to Norman, to William the Conqueror, and many of those have been fought over many occasions. Civil war, plague, all these different things that create these sort of massive points in time. I mean, there is a story. It's not substantiated with historical fact, but that potentially even the gunpowder plot actually may have been planned within the Star Chamber at Ordsall Hall.
Wow.
With Guy Fawkes and Robert Catesby. There's no historical factual evidence, but we know the family that owned the place were friends with the Catesby family. So you just don't know, and that's obviously a massive historical moment. And he subsequently went to the gallows for it and was hung, drawn, and quartered. So
they did like doing that, didn't they?
Lots of gory history.
That was one of their favourites.
Very popular.
Yeah,
reserved for the special ones.
So, what's your in terms of a special place? What's your favourite haunted venue? My personal favourite, or one of my personal favourites, is the Station Hotel, where I threw that coin in the cellar. Wow.
Because of that experience, it sticks with you. But we have been to so many different places where there have been so many great experiences. Ordsall Hall is absolutely a phenomenal place. If there's anybody asks, for somewhere in that kind of area, Ordsall Hall is one that I recommend. But Warwick Castle, I've mentioned, Oxford Castle, the Jamaica Inn, which obviously is a famous novel down in Cornwall.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, we actually do ghost hunting weekends where you actually stay at the hotel. We investigate there, and we investigate Bodmin Jail just around the corner. Yeah. So there are just a number of places, and that's probably one of the most asked questions from guests is, where's your favourite place? And honestly, it can change week in, week out, because you go to somewhere new. For example, Dover Castle this weekend. It's going to be a new experience, and I'll probably come away saying that was amazing. It's my new favourite place.
I hope you have some extraordinary experiences.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we document things. We put everything on the Haunted Happenings Facebook page. Yeah. So that if we capture anything, with audio or visually, we document it so people can see it and share it. Because the ghost hunting isn't about somebody being right or wrong or anything like that. It's about people who are interested in it. Hey, look, there's something interesting. Have a look and make of it what you will.
And how's the response? Like, do you find it's a popular thing to do?
Very much so. I mean, we host on average about 8 events every single weekend around the country, all through the year. And more we're finding more people are getting involved. The guests that come on the events, we see time after time because they just love the experience, and they're always in search of something more, and they'll often ask us, where else can I go? Where can I go? Where would you recommend? Yeah. And because we've literally got 60, 70 different locations that we go to regularly, it's a great hobby, and it's a great way of meeting new friends as well. We've got people that have formed friendships and they now go ghost hunting together. A really great experience, really exciting, something different. We have people come in for groups for birthdays or for friends when they gather together, even stag and hen do's, private events, stag and hen parties. Yeah. Where they can come and experience, rather than going out drinking, they can come and experience something completely different.
What does it take to be a Haunted Happenings host? What do you need to do?
You need to love going to old buildings like this in search of ghosts and spirits, and you just need to be a people person. Because at the end of the day, people come along to these events, and as you mentioned, they are sometimes sort of a little bit fearful. Yeah. So they're looking to somebody just to sort of, for a little bit of leadership, guidance, support through the experience. But it's just about enjoying talking to people and meeting new people more than anything else, and obviously loving the ghost hunting as well.
Tell us, I've got to wind this up, but tell us about your the website. Where do we find you guys?
So it's www.hauntedhappenings.com. hauntedhappenings.co.uk. And on the website, you can navigate your way around. You'll find all of the locations that we go to. You can put your postcode in and see which the closest ones are for you. You can also find us on Facebook and Haunted Happenings official page, and also on Twitter at Haunted Hap, and everything is on there.
Very cool. And can we see some of the footage as well?
Yeah, there are videos and everything on the Facebook page. There are videos on the website, and photographs of all the locations, and a little bit of background as to what you can expect from each one of them.
Awesome, very cool. I'm tempted. I might come and have a look myself.
You absolutely should.
I would love to. I'll come to Ordsall Hall. That sounds like a rockin' place. All right, Wayne, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem.
I've had a really good time.
Take care.
And try to remain in one piece when you go to these places.
If you hear me scream at the weekend, you'll know what's happening.
All right, you take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. That was the rather wonderful Wayne Spurrier. He's a event host at Haunted Happenings, which is one of the largest ghost hunting companies in the UK, and they go around a number of different locations, obviously around the UK, to the incredible history that is in this country, is between Scotland and Wales and England and Ireland. Obviously, their history is quite phenomenal. So I don't doubt that a ghost hunting tour with these guys would be pretty incredible. So go and check out their website. That's where did I have that? I'll bring it up again and I'll plug them again before the end of the show. But in the meantime, you're listening to Willow Willis on Fab Radio International. This is Alice in Chains, Man in the Box.